Over the years, I have interviewed witnesses of the 9/11 terrorist attacks and rushed to the scene to obtain anecdotes from witnesses from a catastrophic train crash or the Virginia Tech shooting massacre. It makes sense that people I spoke to would have intimately remembered such shocking, emotionally charged events. Some call this flashbulb memory. Even those can be unreliable. In 1977, 60 eyewitnesses to a plane crash that killed 9 people were interviewed by Flying magazine, but they had differing recollections. One of the witnesses explained that the plane was heading right toward the ground, straight down. Yet, the photographs showed that the airplane hit flat and at a low enough angle to skid for almost 1,000 feet. For journalists, faulty memory is definitely a problem. So, how do you guard against it? Said Richard E. Meyer, a 2-time Pulitzer Prize finalist in feature writing. For one of these pieces, a woman trapped inside of her body after a stroke, Meyer interviewed her using a letterboard because she could not speak. Much of her narrative was from the life of her mind when no one else knew she was alive inside. Many parts could not be otherwise verified. I had to depend on her memory, he said. I know this is going in, but to test his own confidence in her memories after the stroke, he first talked to her husband, sister, daughter, and nurses and checked memories of her life pre-stroke with others. They checked out. The director of UC Irvine's literary journalism program had an eye-opening experience when reporting a death in White Bear Lake. To reconstruct a scene, he interviewed people who had attended a funeral. In one of these interviews, a person remembered something peculiar. The little boy who was the focus of the story was wearing red plastic sunglasses. In the context of the story, I knew the meaning, Barry Siegel said. He had a black eye. When Siegel went over the scene with 10 other funeral attendees, he tried not to lead them with questions. No one else mentioned the sunglasses. And then he interviewed a 12th. Lo and behold, Siegel said, that person also remembered the boy in the red plastic sunglasses. There is no absolute guarantee that everything in a nonfiction narrative is the absolute truth. But you, as the writer, have the obligation to get as close to the truth as you possibly can, Meyer said. And the only way to do that is to report the living hell out of it. He challenged anyone who wanted to write his or her own memoir to actually report it out and see how often they are wrong about what they remember. Some journalists have done just that, including David Carr of the New York Times and Walt Harrington, a former reporter for the Washington Post magazine. Harrington, now a professor of literary journalism at the University of Illinois, once said, "Truth is a documentary, physical reality, as well as the meaning we make of that reality, the perceptions we have of it. A true story is always filtered through the teller's take on it. The mind and its memory do not just record and retrieve information and experiences, but also infer, fill in gaps, and construct," wrote Brian Boyd in The Origin of Stories. Episodic memory's failure to provide exact replicas of experience appears to not be a limitation of memory, but an adaptive design. Narrative, as Siegel explains, shapes meaning and order out of an existence that is otherwise just angst and chaos. This is one takeaway that nonfiction enthusiasts might consider when thinking about the intersection between stories and memory. There is harmony in both. And then here are your questions that you can write to. So you'll have a 1-page response after you either read or listen to me read the article.